Renaissance. The movement brought notice to the great works of African American art and inspired and influenced future generations of African American artists and intellectuals. The self-portrait of African American life, identity, and culture that emerged from Harlem was transmitted to the world at large, challenging the racist and disparaging stereotypes of the Jim Crow South. In doing so, it radically redefined how people of other races viewed African Americans and understood the African American experience. Among the Renaissance's most significant contributors were intellectuals W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Cyril Briggs, and Walter Francis White, electrifying performers Josephine Baker and Paul Robeson, writers and poets Zora Neale Hurston, Effie Lee Newsom, Countee Cullen, visual artists Aaron Douglas and Augusta Savage, and an extraordinary list of legendary musicians, including Louis Armstrong, Count Basie, U.B. Blake, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, Ivy Anderson, Fats Waller, and Jelly Roll Morton. The Great Depression of 1929 was the beginning of the end of the Harlem Renaissance. However, the Harlem Renaissance's impact on America would endure forever. The Harlem Renaissance instilled in African Americans a new spirit of self-determination and pride, a new social consciousness, and a new commitment to political activism, all of which would provide a foundation for the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. In doing so, it validated the belief that art could be a vehicle to improve the lives of the African Americans. During tonight's program, we will explore poetry, politics, jazz, and theater, and invite you to participate by sharing your thoughts and questions in the chat. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our program. I will now turn it over to Miss Tiffany Burgess, who will discuss one of the great poets of the time.
Thank you, Sister Lindsay. Good evening. My name is Tiffany Burgess, and I'm excited to highlight the impact that Langston Hughes had on the Harlem Renaissance. Often, when we think of the Harlem Renaissance, we naturally think of the 1920s in Harlem, New York, where it all started. Although Elaine Locke predicted in The New Negro, an interpretation, a broader, ongoing renaissance of Black literature and the arts that he envisioned as continuously evolving. This is evident in Hughes's career that spanned far beyond the 1920s in Harlem. Throughout his career, he wrote 16 collections of poetry, 12 novels and short stories, 11 major plays, 8 books for children, 7 works of nonfiction, and numerous essays. This evening, I'd like to share 2 samples of his work that could still be very relevant or even written in today's time. The first will be Hughes discussing and then reciting "The Negro Speaks of Rivers."
This is "The Negro Speaks of Rivers," one of my earliest poems written in 1920, just after I came out of high school. The way this poem came to be written was that I was going to Mexico to visit my father, who lived in Mexico City, and on the train going across the Mississippi River, just outside St. Louis, I looked out the window and I saw this great muddy river flowing down toward the heart of the South, and I began to think about what this river meant to the Negro people, how, in a sense, our history was linked to this river, how in slavery time my grandmother told me that to be sold down the Mississippi was one of the worst things that could happen to a Negro slave. And then I remembered that I'd read about Abraham Lincoln going down the Mississippi as a young man, and he went on a raft to New Orleans, and he saw human beings bought and sold in the slave market there, and he was so horrified by this that he never forgot it. And many years later, of course, we know that it was Lincoln who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, as the train went on into the gathering dusk, because it had been about sunset when we crossed the river, I took my father's letter out of my pocket and began to write down on the back of his letter this poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
Next, narrated by Alfre Woodard, Let America Be America Again.
Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love, where never kings connive, nor tyrants scheme that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be the land where every man is free. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on people's lives, we must take back our land again. America! Oh, yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath. America will be.
As you carry on with your evening, please reflect on these words. Ask yourselves what you believe the poems mean and how they tie into your generation. I now turn it over to Ms. Ashley Queen Monterio to discuss Black nationalism.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Queen Monterio. As we continue through the Harlem experience, let's now focus on the social and political movements that transpired. The Harlem Renaissance has been described as an explosion of creativity and culture within New York City's African American community in the 1920s. However, its true impact far surpassed a mere cultural movement. It was the locus for radicalization and the politicalization for a disenfranchised population. The creative minds behind the Harlem Renaissance used artistic expression to prove their humanity and demand equality from an often hostile white America post-World War I. The literal migration of Southern Blacks to the North also symbolized a mental shift, changing the previous image of the rural, uneducated African American to one of urban, cosmopolitan, and sophistication. This new identity led to increased social consciousness and endowed a population that until this time had only experienced inferiority and depravity. This movement provided a source of relief of their oppression and gave them hope, faith, and inspiration to create an empowered identity. This new movement wasn't just a coincidence. However, it was driven by several key circumstances and figures, and among the most notable was Marcus Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr. was a Jamaican political activist, publisher, journalist, entrepreneur, and orator. He was the founder of the first President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, an African Communities League, through which he declared himself provisional president of Africa. Ideologically, a Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist, his ideas came to be known as Garveyism, a voice in Black nationalism. Let's take a look.
Marcus Garvey was born into the racial inequities of the colonial system of Jamaica. He decided to fight for change when he read the autobiography of Booker T. Washington, an educator whose message was self-reliance and self-help through education and economics.
All of those things actually make sense to Garvey in Jamaica. They make sense to a Garvey who's wrestling with the effects of colonialism, racial self-hatred and self-loathing that the colonial system imposed upon Black people in Jamaica.
In 1914, while in Jamaica, Garvey organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, to build up racial pride and develop educational and economic opportunities for Blacks.
He had these high aspirations for building this universal, this worldwide organization to empower people of African descent.
2 years later, Garvey came to the United States and established the UNIA in New York City's Harlem.
There were at least 700 chapters of the UNIA in the United States by 1921 through 1924. There were over 1,000 chapters of the UNIA throughout the world. Garvey was a master showman and a master organizer.
Marcus Garvey was a Caribbean American who would come to reshape the meanings of African America.
Garvey spoke boldly about self-respect and pride in African heritage, a message that appealed to many African Americans frustrated with the violence and disenfranchisement they faced in the United States.
Marcus Garvey obviously has one of the largest mass movements in the 20th century. Definitely the largest of people of African descent.
Garvey and his followers held demonstrations and parades in Harlem to encourage a sense of dignity and identity as a noble people.
Garvey would have these huge parades and he would dress up, and part of that pomp and circumstance was saying, we are a people and we are a coherent people, and then to be a coherent people means that we have rights and we can create a nation.
Shunning integration, Garvey preached a separate African community, complete with Black businesses and institutions.
Garvey encouraged the development of Black entrepreneurship through the Negro Factories Corporation. which was modeled after Booker T. Washington's National Negro Business League.
The UNIA saw the importance of economics and independent institutions as fundamental to freedom. Garvey was building a set of institutions that are about creating a kind of peoplehood and a nationhood here in the United States.
Part of Garvey's plan was for some African Americans to return to Africa and create a nation there. It was known as the Back to Africa movement.
Marcus Garvey electrifies much of the African American population throughout the cities of the United States with his Back to Africa movement. Race, men, and women unite, Garvey would say. We are mistreated here, we're going back to Africa. Rise up, ye mighty race.
Garvey started a steamship line called the Black Star Line for trade with Africa and the Caribbean and as transportation for people returning to Africa. The business failed and brought trouble for Garvey.
In 1923, Garvey was arrested for mail fraud because of the sale of the stock of the Black Star steamship line through the U.S. Postal Service. Garvey personally was not involved in any kind of corruption or theft, but unfortunately he was not a good judge of business character.
Marcus Garvey was convicted and sentenced to serve time at a federal penitentiary. President Calvin Coolidge later commuted his sentence, and Garvey was deported from the United States in 1927. He returned to Jamaica as a hero.
Garvey understood that building a black protest movement, of black pride, of black ownership in business and self-respect was also a cultural endeavor. And there was a sense of community and cultural identity and an affirmation of African heritage. All of these were part of the UNIA. And it was an extraordinary spiritual and cultural movement.
Marcus Garvey's ideas inspired future black nationalist movements like Nation of Islam, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the Black Panthers.
As we move to our next segment, think about and discuss in the chat what made Marcus Garvey so dangerous to the white American dream in a capitalistic society. And now, Don Patillo will take you through the impacts of jazz during the Harlem Renaissance.
Thank you, Ashley. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our jazz club for the Harlem Renaissance. Tonight, we are going to reflect and sing and dance to some of the music that came out of the Harlem Renaissance period, specifically jazz. Jazz was born out of the Black experience in America, basically fusing African and European musical traditions. Jazz evolved from slave work songs, spirituals, such as religious Black African folk songs, the blues, brass band music, and ragtime. Jazz, more than any other music, has been linked with legal and social equality for all, particularly African Americans. As we sit back and relax, we will listen to a medley of music. The first will be a sample from Billie Holiday, also known as Lady Day. The name of the song she will sing is called Strange Fruit. Understand, this song is about lynching. So listen to the words as she describes this strange fruit. Law enforcement at that time considered the song as a catalyst for the civil rights movement. And therefore, law enforcement, specifically the FBI, did not want this song to be sung. After we hear from Ms. Holiday, we will listen to a mix of music by Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington. And we will close with a Callaway Boogie from Cab Calloway.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
Swell, Dolly, I can tell, Dolly, you keep going, still going, you stay going strong. Yeah, bro, never. But in my old favorite tunes, when they win, oh yeah.
Don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing.
It don't mean a thing, all you gotta do is swing.
Makes no difference if it's sweet or hot. Just give that rhythm every little thing you've got.
It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing.
It's easy to do, call the Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Keeps you groovy 24 hours a day. You like music with the boogie beat? Dig this jive jack beat. The Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Callaway Boogie. Keeps you groovy 24 hours a day. We play waltzes, bebop and jive. Dig this boogie, keep you alive. Callaway Boogie, Callaway Boogie, Callaway Boogie, Callaway Boogie. Keeps you groovy 24 hours a day.
Groovy, baby. Now we're going to hear from Miss Lenora Odom to learn about the theater and Shuffle Along. Lenora, over to you.
Thanks, Dawn. Shuffle Along opened on Broadway on May 24th, 1921, with a script by Flournoy Miller and Aubrey Lyles and music by Noble Sissel and Eubie Blake. Shuffle Along was the first Black written and scored musical ever to be performed on Broadway. There was quite a concern that an all-Black show would not have broad appeal for white audiences, but Shuffle Along was one of the most significant shows of its time. Credited with the starting of the Harlem Renaissance, Shuffle Along.
You muted yourself, Lenora.
Thank you. Shuffle Along had a huge run of 504 shows for integrated audiences. Adding to its list of firsts, Shuffle Along was the first time that Blacks were able to sit in the orchestra seats, shoulder to shoulder with white audience members. Shuffle Along showcased the first all-female chorus and was the debut for a 16-year-old Josephine Baker and bass baritone Paul Roberson. The show had brief revivals in 1933 and in 1952, and most recently was reprised in 2016 by playwright George C. Wolfe with choreography by Samuel Glover. Joining us to discuss their experience as performers in the 2016 adaptation are Mr. Jason Holley and Ms. Pam Yatsake. Jason and Pam, welcome. So here you'll see Jason and Pam. I know, but we got to boo them. Those black and white photos are actually the photos that appeared of both of them in the playbill for the Broadway show. So welcome to both of you. I don't know if we can see them too so that people can see our guests, but I would love to start with some questions for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
There we go. Welcome, welcome. And if we can get Pam too, that would be great.
I think am
there you are. Okay,
yeah.
just when you're
Okay.
speaking, perfect. So I want to continue down this road of firsts. Both of you made your Broadway debut in Shuffle Along. We can go to the next slide. Here we have you two captured in all your finery on opening night, April 28th, 2016. So my question, as professional dancers and longtime friends, what did it mean to you to have your Broadway debut in this historic show? Please tell us a little bit about your roles as you tell us about your experience. And either one of you can start. Jason, I can see you, so I'll let you start.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My role in Shuffle Along, I was considered a swing.
Listening to something that they have on Harlem.
You're not on mute. There you go. Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. I was considered a swing. My position was one of the dancers who had to cover all of the male dancer roles. And so I was it's like a standby or an understudy, but a swing has a little harder role than just an understudy because an understudy only follows one specific person. But the swing, my experience with Shuffle Along and the understanding of what I was really getting myself into or being a part of didn't really happen in the beginning because, like Lenora said, I was debuting on Broadway and I had tried for years, auditioning for Broadway. I've been a tap dancer since I was 3 years old, and I've auditioned for so many shows that I was turned away from that had strong tap in the show. And finally, I get to be a part of this historic show that has so much more meaning than just me debuting on Broadway. And so I immediately had to go into, and especially getting the swing position, I immediately had to go into focusing on choreography, focusing on my role, my position. And for the first maybe month, I don't think it really hit me until we moved into the theater that I was a part of this historic moment. Like she said before, there were already 2 revivals of the show, but we were creating a story about the original show, and it meant something different than just reviving a show that really came from the hearts of these performers they were self-taught Black people back in 1920s who those opportunities for African Americans were just not happening. And they poured their heart and soul into the show. So reviving a show would have just been standard, but we were creating a story and trying to get the story of what happened and why it's so hard for Black people and Black shows to live and last on Broadway. So it was definitely an extraordinary experience, especially once you started to realize the historical movement and moment that you were a part of.
Excellent. What about you, Pam? What was your experience like?
Hello, everyone. I was a part of the ensemble. So one thing about our show is because before Shuffle Along, there was no dancing chorus line of women in a Broadway show. Everyone always did, you'd see the ensemble women perform in Broadway shows prior, and they always did the, Vanna White thing and paraded around in the costumes and just looked really beautiful on stage. And our show was really centered around, Jason can probably attest to this, but around the ensemble women and highlighting how we standardized that format of having a dancing chorus line of women in a Broadway show. And so it was, that was a huge, a huge undertaking just as far as like how much we were actually featured in the show. And then on top of that, I was an understudy or a cover, we would say, to one of the principal roles. And it was the woman who played Gertrude Saunders and Florence Mills. So she played two characters in the show, and that was one of my understudy roles. But the show was incredible, and being a part of our show, which was a show about a show, explaining the historical significance of why Shuffle Along, was this huge, wildly successful show, and now it is a footnote in history books. Like, how does that happen? How do we have this erasure of history, from something that was so significant to not just, Black history, but American history, theater history. It literally shaped Broadway as we know it today. After Shuffle Along, having a jazz score and things, shows just started to pop up using that same model and formula. And it also opened the door for more and more Black shows, and Black shows that didn't just have Black performers, but, Black creative teams. And it was just very important. And so our show talked about how it came to be and everything that happened subsequent, so that we could really examine how this happened. And for the most part, people know nothing about it.
Yeah. I definitely, when I came to see it, honestly, I was so excited to see you two up on stage. I'm not sure I caught any of the historical significance, but I have done days of research on this show and now understand the historical context of it much, much more. So thank you for setting that up for us. I would love if we could now show the clip. I think we have about a 2-minute clip that'll give people a sense of what actually happened on stage. And you'll see Pam, she's in blue one time and she's in yellow another time. So look for Pam. You'll definitely be able to notice her. Okay, so we can move forward one slide, please. Thank you. So, as I talked about in the beginning, some credit Shuffle Along with really starting the Harlem Renaissance. I just want to know, when they were creating it, not now. So I think we really appreciate the significance of it now. But when they were creating it, what were these creators, those four in the middle? There you see Yubi and Fauntleroy and all the creators of the show. What were they trying to do? What was it they were trying to do with bringing this show to Broadway and creating it at all?
I mean, I believe they were just trying to initially create opportunities for Black people and for Black artists who were not given these opportunities. And in order to have some kind of platform to be able to express anything through art, the only way to do it was to work together. It wasn't going to happen individually. And each person that you see there, Aubrey Lyles, Noble Sissel, Flournoy, Miller, and who's the other one?
Yubi.
Yubi Blake. They all had something different that contributed to the magic of this show. And if they were to go individually and try to do it by themselves, they weren't going to get the same success that they were going to get as a group. So they had to come together. One of the interesting things, though, about one of the clips that you just saw was the battle at the end. The last battle that you saw was Rang Tang and Chocolate Dandies, and eventually these four guys ended up having to split and started doing their own shows, and that started to create kind of like a competition between whose Black show was going to be the most successful at the time after Shuffle Along had closed. And it wasn't the same. They didn't get the same reactions. They didn't get the same audience. They didn't get the same experience and exposure that they did with the four of them together. And so that scene that you saw was a representation of the two different shows that Aubrey and Noble did. I'm sorry. Yes.
Aubrey and Effie.
Aubrey and Effie, sorry. And the others. And it was just a representation in our eyes of what it seemed like. There were no actual battles in the alley, or they weren't actually fighting each other, but it was just to interpret, what it felt like as far as Black people trying to still maintain their positions on Broadway.
Okay. I'll move us along a little bit. We can go to the next one. There we go. Okay, so Pam was involved in the development workshops for Shuffle Along. So responsible for the people that were coming up with concept, making sure that everything worked and fit together and hung together like a show. So we talked a little bit about the importance of bringing Shuffle Along back in 2016 and having that historic revival. But Pam, if you could tell us, what were some of the differences with this show versus the shows of the past, and certainly versus the original?
Well, I mean, the primary difference is, again, our show being about a show versus just, like Jason mentioned, just a pure revival. This show that we worked on, one thing that was unique about our version of Shuffle Along is normally shows do developmental workshops or labs to actually have a product to shop to investors or producers and try to get financial support and backing. And one thing that was unique about our show is that we actually had that from the moment the creative process began. It already had the backing, it already had the support. So the creative team was really just playing in the sandbox. And I think because of that, it was an arduous process for us because things were always evolving and always changing. But it really lended a lot of freedom to the creative team to explore every part of their imagination and see it play out on us. So, or, bring it to fruition and be able to decide whether or not it was going to stay in the show. I think so I did a total of 3 developmental, well, I did a lab. I did 3 labs, which are different from workshops. There's different stipulations by the union on what a lab is and what a workshop is, and ours were designated as labs. So I did 3, but I believe there was a total of like 10. So over the course of like summer of 2015 through the end of 2015, I did 3 labs, which is still like 10 labs is a lot to do when a show already has the support it needs to go up. And yes, it was a really interesting process, but I believe like the biggest difference is just already knowing that you have everything you need for the show to be great. And with the original Shuffle Along, there were so many obstacles that presented themselves to the co-creators. I mean, so many things, like just trying to get a theater, just trying to get a space to have a show on Broadway. And it's a joke because they ended up at 63rd Street, which if you've ever been to New York and you've ever been to the theater district, 63rd Street is way uptown, considered where the, bulk of like the theater district exists. So already, they weren't really in the best location. And it just again shows how much they overcame for the show to be such a success. It ended up being such a success that they changed 63rd Street to a one-way street because there was so much traffic outside the theater every night that they ended up making the street a one-way. They had to add a midnight performance because the show was just so successful that all the other performers on Broadway wanted to come see the show, but never had an opportunity because everyone's on the same schedule, much like today. And so they added that midnight performance. So our biggest, I feel like I said, the difference is that we had everything we needed to be great, so to speak. But I will say, even within that was the room for our director to have more or less ownership. It's interesting because our show was actually produced by a white production company and team, which was unlike the original Shuffle Along because they fought to have, like executive decision making over the production. They said, like, if we're going to bring in a producer, we want to be very clear that we are making the decisions and calling the shots. And it's interesting that today, which George C. Wolfe, our director, he's very erudite, he's very sharp. He definitely had a say all the way from beginning to end. But I think that's interesting to look at, how much they worked in 1920, 1921 to bring this show to fruition and make it a reality, and weren't really making any apologies and really set their own terms. And then today, the way the economy is, the way the systemic structure is of our country, it's like we're kind of still in the situation. Like, there aren't too many shows that are completely put up by an entirely Black creative team, producers. It doesn't happen often because it costs millions and millions to put up a show. So
especially choreographers. You don't see any choreographers.
No, that's very rare.
So I'm going to take a jump since that's where you all are right now, and I want to talk about Blacks on Broadway. Broadway has really for a long time been said to have a diversity problem. We didn't really have numbers for 2020. We all know why, but for 2019, numbers were already on the decline. Black performers made up about 18.6% of all Broadway performers, which was down considerably from 23% in 2018. So based on your experience and what you just sort of lived through yourself, what do you think are the main contributors to the lack of Black performers on Broadway?
I believe, again, like I said, growing up and having Broadway wanting to be or being one of your biggest dreams, as a Black male dancer, you're already looked at as a specific way, and you're going to be casted in specific shows if they even come up. And so I feel, in 2016 when we debuted, there were 11 to 13 of us that debuted in one show on Broadway, Black people. And that is equivalent to how many Black people might debut on Broadway in one season.
And I want to add, I'm sorry, I just have to add this. It was not all young people debuting.
Yes.
These were theater veterans, people
Yes.
who have been in shows and been working as performers for a long time, and they were also debuting.
Yes, including us. we have tried for several years, and like I said before, auditioning for other shows that have, and I'm also outside of tap. Pam and I are also trained dancers in other styles, and so we would go out for so many shows, but would still get rejected just based off of the fact that we were Black and didn't fit the look of what the ensemble, the cookie cutter ensemble looked like.
Or the quota had been met.
Or the quota had been met. So, yes.
Because in a lot of stories that don't feature, a role or a story about people of color or Black people, they're not really looking to include more than a few of us.
Yeah. And especially those that are of a lighter tone, like Pam and I. What's the point? If we're gonna go Black, we're gonna go Black, right?
Right. We're gonna find someone more discernibly, like for me, I always get called in for things that are like ethnically ambiguous, and when I show up for a call that's for Black women specifically, it's like, I'm not really what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And it's hard in that way, just navigating things, because for when you are a performer on Broadway, and more specifically a Black performer, the expectation of what your skill set should be, it's like, if you are not excellent at all the things, you probably aren't going to make the cut. Like, you have to be excellent. And the vocals, I don't have a strong belt. That's not really what my voice gives. But when they are looking for a Black ensemble member, they're looking for someone who has that strong belt, who can do all the things and fill in all the blanks where the rest of the cast, falls short.
Right.
So it is definitely one of those things where everyone I know who's a performer on Broadway who's Black is one of the best at what they do. Yeah, they're the best singer, the best dancer, and they work all the time. Because
so let's talk about some of these people that are the best. If we can move forward one, because you can keep on that best. So you all shared the stage with some powerhouses, right?
Yeah.
Some really elite Broadway performers, veterans of the stage, 6-time Tony Award winner Audra McDonald, Brian Stokes Mitchell of Broadway fame, TV fame, movie fame, and of course, my pal, Billy Porter. And then you had, Sauvignon Glover as the choreographer. I mean, this was not like a little show, right? You guys went all out, right? What was it like to work with them? What was it like even just being in their presence? What was it like learning from them and creating with them?
Well, let me say this really quick. When I came into the show as a swing, I was one of the last people casted. I was casted in January of 2016, and everyone was already in rehearsals. Pam was already giving me months of an earful of what was going on. And this was before I even knew that I was going to be a part, or even thought that I would be even close to being a part of the show. When I got into that room for the first time, I don't think I saw Billy, Audra, Brian. I don't think I saw any celebrity, honestly. They were there, but I didn't see them until about a month later. I didn't realize, oh my gosh, I'm in this room with these people, because they were so normal, and I had a job to do that was quick, and I had to be on my feet. So they set this wonderful tone in the room that didn't make you feel like you were not a part, or you weren't worthy enough to be there, or that you were beneath them. And Pam worked with them a lot longer, so she has more rehearsal experience. I have more
theater time. Yes, I would say, being in a room with talent of that capacity. You're like in a master class every day.
Yeah.
And if you're fortunate, you pay attention to all the things that that you can glean from the time that you're exchanging with these people. But they were consummate professionals. I totally understand why they are who they are. They are the most generous, humble, hardworking, wonderful people, and just wonderful human beings. And when I say generous, I don't just mean generous in like a, you know, just giving artists. Like I mean, they were there for us within the process, outside of the process. They shared tons of advice. And just really cultivated a space where everyone they made you feel like you were there for a reason. Everyone was there for a reason. Everyone had something to offer. We were all there and chosen to be there because we are really great at what we do. And I take that with me all the time. It was something that really helped me as an artist, and ever being on this everlasting journey as an artist. Even in my adult life, it's like when you are in the room, it's because you belong in the room. And I think that's something that we have to constantly remind ourselves, just as Black performers too. It's like, there's so many things happening that try to take that light. And
Yeah.
so having that empowering, moment with these people who are great, not just great because they're the best at what they do and they're Black. No, they're just the best,
Yeah.
period. And hearing that from them and getting that experience has been like life-changing.
And I'll add one last thing to that. My second day, again, I said that I was a swing in the show, and I had to cover all the male dancers that you saw in those clips. I had to cover every single one of those roles, and I was on stage every day. Somebody was calling out every day. But in rehearsals, my second day of rehearsal, someone got sick and was not there, and I had jumped in immediately. And I'll always remember, after we ran one of the numbers, Audra McDonald screams, "And that's how you swing." Because again, like Pam said, they acknowledge that you were a part of this for a reason. You're the best at what you do. You're the best Black person at what you do. And they made it known that coming from them, we were equal in a sense of artistic, our artistic selves, and not just, our resumes and how many awards we have. They were very, very close with us on that.
So here's your chance to pay it forward. And you've received lots of advice in your career as Broadway performers, which I can now call you both. But we do have some budding dancers. We have some Broadway aspirants on the line. And what would be your piece of advice to them? This picture here is their Tony Award performance. What would be your advice to those young dancers? Think back either to yourself or, you all are around young dancers every single day as dance educators. What would be your advice to them?
I'll keep mine quick. Don't give up. Don't give up. It's a long, hard journey, and we see now in 2021 that it's not much different from 1921. And it is a long, 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 hard journey. There are way more no's than there are yeses, and you just have to keep going, and mastering your craft. You can't just get complacent, especially when you get a taste of the life and you think, oh, we're in. It can be stripped away as quickly as you got in there. As we learned, it gets stripped away as quickly. We got our closing notice like that, and it was over. It was over. And so I would just say, just keep trying and keep working and keep creating. Give more opportunities for people, to work on different levels.
That was great. I'm like, what am I gonna say now? No. I would say, you never lose investing in yourself. Continue to invest in yourself, invest in your training. You know, one thing that was true, I think, for both of us is we were doing the things. We were taking the classes, we were doing the vocal lessons, we were preparing ourselves so that should that yes finally come, we were ready, you know. And so invest in yourself, train, and you listen to your mentors. Listen to the people in your lives. Your parents are smart people. Listen to them, okay? They got great advice. I would also say, because of, you know, as performers of color, as Black people, what we experience in every situation, right, is just a microcosm of the greater issues that we experience in our daily lives. And so, like that, it's like you have to learn to be resilient, to be strong, and like Holly said, excuse me, Jason, sorry. Like Jason said, you know, just never give up. We've heard so many no's, and the no's are going to probably outweigh the yeses, but that makes the yes that much more special and that much more valuable. And learn to value those yeses. Like, this experience was incredible. It will always be incredible. I will hold it on a pedestal for the rest of my life. It was so special, and I actually am fulfilled if I never do another Broadway show again. Because it was that incredible. So, you know, enjoy the ups, you know, and take what you can from the downs, and that's the balance in life. So just, you know, find the balance.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, excellent advice. I can't thank the two of you enough. I mean, this has been wonderful. It was so great to be able to give you another opportunity to sit down and talk about your amazing experience. You know, I'm still proud. I'm going to be proud of you two forever with this. So just thank you so much for coming here, sharing with us, sort of fellowshipping with us as we all learn something new and sharing with us the history. Pam, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And
I
now
wouldn't
for
have
our
spent it any
final
other way.
and now for our final closeout, I will turn it over to Leslie Day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jason and Pam. I just want to echo what Lenora said. I mean, this was an incredible event, and just kind of the cherry on top was having personal experience from individuals who have, you know, performed on Broadway and had to work hard. And so we certainly appreciate you taking the time this evening to be with us. Pam, happy birthday again. Appreciate you taking a little slice of your birthday time to spend with us, and we appreciate it. And on behalf of our president, Rhonda Luss, I'd like to thank everybody who attended our virtual Harlem experience. I'm hoping that everyone not just enjoyed this event, but you learned something interesting from it. And if you did, you know, we'd like to challenge you to share that information with somebody else. The Springfield Pearls Interest Group provides community service to the areas of Springfield and Lorton, Virginia. So we hope that you'll be interested in attending our next event. You can follow us on your favorite social media platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you'll be able to find us at Springfield Pearls. So I, again, just want to thank everybody for your time this evening. Be safe, wear a mask, and just have a great evening.
This was excellent.
Outstanding. Pam, Jason, thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Yes.
Giving a great
Yes.
insight on the Black experience.
Mhm.
Shuffle along, your lessons learned as actors and
Yes,
artists.
this was wonderful.
You
I think I'm gonna
guys-
call my auntie who's 85 and ask her, hey, guess what I learned tonight? Okay, have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you.
Night.
had to do it. It's great. Absolutely fabulous. Of course, ladies, thank you all for coming tonight. Y'all have a good night. Target 4 committee, please stay on. Kudos, 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 Target 4, outstanding. But stay on the call. Take, you can let some people go. Thank you so